The idea, insight, or secret you need for massive impact is just moments away. It's time to claim your career crown. The podcast where business owners and entrepreneurs share the keys to the kingdom to help you open the vault to your greater success. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Petite to Queen's Claim Your Career Crown podcast. I'm your host, Lynn, and today I'm joined by our wonderful guest, Rachel Vasquez. And today we're going to be talking about how to reconstruct grief with resilience and rediscover joy. With practical techniques and mindset shifts, you are able to better navigate the grief journey while finding renewed purpose and joy in life. Now, if you get a ton of value in this episode, I would love to invite you to subscribe because it costs nothing to subscribe. I'd love to share with you about Rachel. She is the founder and CEO of Living Beyond Grief and embodies resilience and transformation. Rachel is a grief warrior, senior partner at the Wellness Universe, certified Joywith ambassador, and community advocate for the Modern Widows Club. Women experiencing grief hire Rachel to guide them and their children along their journey to cope with loss, find strength, and embrace healing, so they can overcome pain and rediscover inner peace as they heal. Rachel helps difficult life transitions transform into a life filled with hope, dreams, and endless possibilities. Rachel, I am absolutely pleased and thrilled to have you here. Welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you. It is so fun and exciting to be here. I'm absolutely thrilled. And I just really want to express my gratitude for having me on your show.
Well, this is going to be wonderful. It's an important discussion. And let's sort of dive in with what inspired you to get started, Rachel.
Oh, I love this question because I have experienced myself a lot of loss throughout my entire life. And in December of 2018, I lost my best friend, my ride or die, my confidant, my husband, and best friend of 23 years to a motorcycle accident. He was hit by a underage, under the influence driver. And it left me with 4 children, 3 of whom were still living in the house. And everything that transpired from that moment forward was so absolutely surreal. And I felt lower than I've ever felt, that I thought any human could ever feel. And as through my journey and things started to unfold, it was like a breath came into me and said, this is your new life now. And you're going to guide other people through this as a light and hold their hands and help hold them along, because I just felt so alone. And I never want anyone to feel that they're alone when they're experiencing loss or grief or anything that is that transitional moment into a new life that needs to be created.
Oh, wow. What a heartbreaking story, but how you really changed it. You really changed the narrative. And that's what's so important. And so that's really leading us into our conversation. And, it's going to be hard to even begin. So how do you begin to reconstruct grief with resilience and rediscover joy?
Yes. So I always think of it like when you watch a cooking show and they have these beautiful meals and they try to figure out, how did they make it? What are they doing? So your life is something that you've been experiencing as a couple. So whether it's your spouse or a partner that you've been with a long time, or whoever it is that you consider that your person in life, you've created this commingled existence together. So now when you experience that loss, it's like trying to figure out what that recipe was. So you begin to just take it apart piece by piece. And as your life is Now, grief, you begin to take apart that grief piece by piece and understand really where it's coming from, because especially in widowhood, we have so many other things that compound our grief. So it's once we start to take that apart and start to realize the different things that you're experiencing in that grief, you are able to begin to rebuild with a new way of thinking, a new perspective, and with resilience. And that's when all the magic happens.
So let's dive in a little deeper. So, how do you do this? And what does this guided process look and feel like?
So it just kind of depends on where you are personally in your journey. I work with people from very beginning stages of grief all the way through. They just are looking for some support, or they're looking for additional tools and resources. So it really is about meeting them where they're at. For me, I became an expert in so many different types of modalities because I experimented personally with so many different things. I had felt very separated and secluded from all the people that had always been in my life, which is something that's very common in loss. People tend to not know how to talk to you, how to approach you, and they just start to back away. And so you begin this journey sometimes in a very different space than where you began. And as you start to do this, you'll experiment with different things. So, what are your new beliefs? Are you looking to God? Are you looking towards something more spiritual? Are you looking for what is it that you're trying to understand in your life? And so through those things, I offer a wide variety of practices, and I help walk them through and understand how it is and why these practices work. So for example, something like journaling, why it is so important, even though you hate it. Like, I have never been a diary girl, and this has been such an important thing to do in order to really sort out the emotional state that you're in from day to day, because it's consistently changing. I went into energy work. I had a Reiki session, and I was amazed because I had never done anything like that before, or ever entertained a thought. I didn't really even know what it was. And then I was like, wow, that's really amazing. So I continued to try because I felt, why not? I have such a miserable emotional state, and I was willing to do anything to move myself and to get that something to give, so that I could begin feeling again, and feeling the strength to support my children, feeling the emotional fortitude to go back to work or design, as I ended up doing, an entirely new life altogether.
Yeah, my goodness. My goodness. I want to ask something that's, more of a specific question because, when you're in that space, and especially when it's new and you've had that loss, because this is something from my own experience. I had a friend at work who had lost her husband, and now he had a terminal illness, but his death, when it did occur, it was unexpected at the time. And so someone at work was supposed to be covering for her, and he was really doing just an abysmal job. And I just stepped in and started taking care of things. And about a month in, she had not been at work for a month. I mean, all right, that's pretty. The owner of the business that came around and said, "When is she going to be back?" And I was absolutely shocked. And I looked at him and I went, "Her husband died. He died." It's like, and there's this thing, and it's like people think after a few weeks, it's like, well, they're like, they're not in your space. And I think for many people that's when you feel more alone than ever, because nobody gets it. They don't understand where you're at, that they've all moved on and you're still there because it's still so raw, so fresh.
Yes. Oh, I I actually just spoke with someone on this exact subject, and it's kind of like, wow, you're still grieving that? I was over that death like 6 months ago. What is your problem? And it's like, yeah, because you were not in love and involved and commingled and a part of a single unit. So when you lose this person, it changes every single thing fundamentally down to the most minute thing. The fact that you no longer have two toothbrushes on your sink anymore, the way that you grocery shop, like, I'm not buying those gross brownies that he liked, I'm buying the ones that I liked. What every single thing is changing. I have broken down at the meat counter because I didn't know how to buy meat because he's the one who did that, and
Right.
and every single facet of your life is touched by this loss. So even though Mr. Boss is saying, I really am missing my employee who did such a fantastic, great job, and I really wish, from my selfish standpoint and my inability to relate, I really wish that my great employee would get back to work and help me with my business and save my butt. And in the background, they are trying to figure out whether or not they can afford the home that they're in. Did they lose part of an income? How are they going to put their children through college if that's what they're doing? How are they supporting their children if they have them? If they don't, what is the medical situation now? Their medical insurance, was it through their spouse? Was it on their own? Like, there are so many different things, your thoughts and hopes and dreams for the future. Every single thing that has happened in your life has now frozen and shifted. So when you think about that, it's like, how long would it take you to have your life completely burned down in just a second? But how long does it take to rebuild that whole life, that structure of everything in its entirety, all while being in pain and feeling wounded and broken? And so it's kind of like, so at the beginning, you're having to really tend to your wounds,
Right.
and then you can start with the other stuff. And that's different for everyone.
Yeah. Yeah. And of course, the grief process and uh, is different for everyone. So I think that really leads to, I mean, recognizing that, of course, and that requires you to be very flexible in how you work with people. But why is overcoming grief such a challenge for so many individuals?
I feel that for a lot of people, they become stuck, and there's many different reasons for that. So at a clinical level, and I'm not a doctor, I'm not any type of licensed health professional. So when I say this is just from what I've experienced with people that I work with, and for myself. If you are in what's called complicated grief, and that is like a clinical condition, that is something that you may want to consider seeking professional help for. On the other side of that, when you are in those depths of grief and you become stuck, a lot of times it's because your circle of influence and your mindset may be thinking, I've got to get things back to normal. Everybody would say that to me: get back to normal as soon as you can, get back to work, get your kids back into a club, have them get back into Girl Scouts, everything just go back to normal the way that it is, and then you're going to be fixed. And I wish, because that person that happened, 5 minutes, I was kissing my husband goodbye and told him I'd see him at home in a little while, and 5 minutes later, he was in his accident. So just in an instant that can happen. And even if it is something like a long-term illness, you're wrapped up in your life in being a caregiver and sorting out what is going to happen when the inevitable day happens. So when you try to shove yourself back into being the person that you were now that half of you is gone, you're not complete, and it's very difficult to try to go back and fix something, when what you need to do is create something new.
Right. No, I really love that. It's not fixing because, it's not necessarily broken. It's just completely changed. And you have to, um, I love that. So, I mean, we're talking about what holds people back. And certainly one is that many people will suffer in isolation. I mean, that's one thing. But what are other things that hold people back? And let's sort of address one of the big ones, which people suffer in isolation. They just sort of, they, because, like other people, not just the boss at work, but other people, it's like, okay, yeah, they've moved on, and you feel like you don't have that support network. But I don't want to answer the question for you. So what holds people back? Why do they suffer in isolation?
Actually, it can be a couple of things, because what happens to people who are in deep grief, fear, because they've just realized a fear that maybe they never had, or maybe it was something that they were always afraid of happening. But either way, one of your worst fears comes to fruition. And fears can really hold you back, from moving forward, from healing, for experiencing new things, and getting back out there, and trying again. So along also comes guilt, shame, um, a loss of self-worth, because that's just part of, the natural thing that happens. Like, I thought, oh, if I had just hugged him 5 seconds longer, if I had, whatever, trying to go back and figure it out, what you could have done. And that also does that. And trying new things, quite frankly, is exhausting, and it's scary. And so, as an advocate for Modern Widows Club, the first time that I went to a meeting, I showed up and I sat there in this woman's, driveway, and I just thought, I'm tired. Maybe I should try it next month. I don't know. My foot kind of hurts. I think I should go home and make food for the kids. And I told myself 100 things. And then I was just like, I'm going to go. I'm going to go. And I just took a deep breath, and I put this fakest smile on my face. And I'm like, I'm going in. And I went in, and I was met with such warm, amazing women that were on different paths. I mean, on different phases of their grief. Some of them had been 13 years that they had been a widow, and some of them had been, only a few months. So to be able to be welcomed into that space and know that every single woman in that room gets it. They already know. They know. So then you can kind of just get right into the enjoyment of one another's company. And so that's the biggest thing, is really just fear can hold you back, and it can keep you in that place of not wanting to move forward, not wanting to leave your house. It's safe here. The little amygdala in your brain is telling you, don't do anything different. We like what we know, because that's keeping us safe. And so then we start to try to keep ourselves safe.
My goodness. And I can see that, and it's always, it doesn't matter if it's in grief or other situations, trying something new can be very terrifying. I mean, it can be, just a little bit of stress to terrifying, right? And that's one of the biggest things, is taking that leap, as you did. And so kudos, that you said, no, okay, my foot doesn't hurt that much, I'm doing this. My
Well, and
goodness.
one of the things, so there were twofold things that I really felt, drawn to do, was I became a licensed hypnotherapist, and I also became, a grief and life coach, because those two things together, I really wanted to understand the brain. and and the brain is, your subconscious is constantly running that background programming, and
Yeah.
it's what can really keep you in that stuck space, because we start to tell ourselves all types of reasons of why it's best to stay in this
Yeah.
place.
Yeah.
And this is
Yeah.
how we can get beyond that and create new thought beliefs, new patterns, new, um, a whole new belief system and start to leave behind our self-sabotaging thoughts, and make those shifts of perspective and tell ourselves what we want to believe instead. So I'm too broken to ever love again. Okay, well, what do you want to believe instead? That I'm still lovable, whatever that is for the person.
Yeah. Well, that's such good advice. Just right in that piece there. And I did want to ask you, I mean, so for people who are in this place of grief for whatever it happens to be, that person, that could be their pet, it could be a child, a parent, a loss of a job. I mean, so many different things. What should listeners do next to begin that transition?
If you don't have support, reach out and find support. So for me, even with all the tools, even the fact that I've created this business and this community of people to support, I still go and receive my support and my nourishment from these amazing women. Same thing, like I have someone whose position at their company had been downsized, and she'd been with them for 30 years, and she was just devastated because her identity was wrapped into that. So really, it's about going out and getting that support and finding people who are like you, because even through Modern Widows Club, we even have some for somebody who has maybe experienced a loss due to someone taking their own lives. So there are different areas of support. If there was addiction in your marriage, not everyone had a perfect marriage, but it was their life. So addiction or narcissism or abuse, mental, physical, whatever it was, it's really about getting out there and finding that support. And also checking in with yourself to say, what am I really wanting? Because there's going to be a coach or a friend or someone that you can lean on and reach out to help you get different ideas of things to try. I always start with this example. So it was right at COVID had started right after my husband died. And I thought, I want to be a wine girl. Like I see all these girls going, it's wine o'clock. And oh, I want to know notes and talents. And I want to know why they spit the wine out. And I'm doing this. So COVID, and I'm ordering a box of wine clubs. And I had all these boxes of wine. And I'm like, I'm going to learn this. And I got about 2 or 3 bottles in, not at one time, but over the course of a few days. And I go, I don't like wine. So I had no idea. I mean, I'll have a glass here and there, but I'd rather have a margarita or a beer. But I didn't know that about myself. So it's also being really, really willing to experiment and learn more about yourself.
Yeah, I love that. So what practical techniques and mindset shifts will help the most for those people who want to have something to take away today?
Okay, so really about where the main beginning is like pouring a foundation. And for someone who has experienced this loss, that foundation is your own identity. So starting with, who do you want to be? And I go back to my child self of wanting to be a mermaid. I wanted to be a mermaid, and I wanted to swim with the animals, and I wanted to have dolphin friends, and I wanted these things. And then when I got older, I wanted to work at SeaWorld. And then at some point I wanted to be a psychologist. So there was definitely a shift there. But it was like allowing yourself to go back before you met your spouse or partner, back before you had kids, back to when you were like that inner child of yourself, that cosmic 3-year-old, and think, what did I love about myself? What do I love? Do I love poetry? Do I love adventure? And just start writing those things down. What do you admire in other people? Like, oh, I love the way that Maya Angelou speaks. Oh, I love the way that Gordon Ramsay can really flame up some great food. I love the way that my grandmother told stories. So you think about those those things that, oh, my grandpa was funny, funny. I love people who are funny. And as you start to kind of write down this list, you'll start to identify that these are qualities in you. And sometimes we forget who we were as our own person because we had to adapt, and we had to make compromises in our relationships, and in order to make your family become that one unit. So really starting to learn who you are as an individual, not who you are as a parent or as a coworker or as, a daughter or whoever, but start making lists of things that you loved when you were a child, that you dreamed of as a teenager, and be audacious. Like, just put it out there. I want to be an astronaut. Okay, maybe I'm not going to go through NASA right now, but what about being an astronaut? Because I want to have that adventure into the unknown. Okay, so now we're getting to it. And I think that really that's going to be your starting point of everything that is possible for you to dream and create moving forward.
All right. That's beautiful. So, Rachel, is there anything you wish I'd asked you today?
Let's see. I guess it would really be asking, what is it that everyone should know about where they are in their journey right now?
Yeah, absolutely.
And that would be, you are right where you're supposed to be. You are perfect in everything, even though it may feel chaotic or upsetting, it's perfect, and everything is going to be fine. And you are an amazing whole person, and you are loved for more than you could ever comprehend, because you are the only person like you in the whole entire universe. So you are worth that investment into yourself, of loving yourself and creating and not settling, and going for whatever it is that you want.
Wow. So beautiful. Rachel, thank you so much for sharing how to reconstruct grief and resilience and rediscover joy. I know that our listeners are going to want to know more about you and where they can find and connect with you.
Oh, yes. I believe so. I think you have some stuff to put in the show notes. But if they want to go on to, I have Living Beyond Grief Now, and I have a Grief Warrior guide that you can download for free. And always, I am so approachable. Like, if you find me on socials, say hi. And if you have questions, feel free to reach out to me. I would love to speak with you.
All right. And Rachel's exactly right. I'll have all of her links down below, including her website, livingbeyondgriefnow.com. And she's one click away. And Rachel, thank you again so much for being here. It's been such a pleasure. And thank you to everyone who tuned in. We very much appreciate you. This has been such an informative discussion. My goodness. So
thank you.
Thank you, Rachel. Yes.
Thank you.
What was your biggest takeaway from this episode? I would love to hear about it. It's important to share the things you love. If you loved this episode, a 5-star review really helps keep the podcast coming to you regularly. Also, if you want to get more sales strategies to grow your business, make sure you subscribe right now. If you want to get results even faster, I invite you to download my sales strategy checklist at petitetoqueen.com/checklist. This has been Lynn Whitbeck, host of Claim Your Career Crown. I'll see you next time.